Oh, Joel, your movie this week is your first Western. It's called Gunslinger, and it stars Beverly Garland in her pre-Doty period.
Beverly Garland.
This time we watch Season 5, Episode 11, Gunslinger.
Beverly Garland? Turns out she's the sheriff. Or, Marshal, this fall on ABC. Something like that.
I would watch the heck out of a show with Beverly Garland as the Marshal this fall on ABC. But first, I think we might have some follow-up.
Yeah, sort of. We have a little follow-up. I had Thai food for dinner last night, and I ordered an avocado smoothie.
Oh, well, that's excellent. How was it? Were you won over by the sweetness of an avocado?
I've had it before, but it was very nice. It's very mild, the avocado smoothie experience. Very mild, but my doctor strongly suggested that I have more avocados in my diet for heart health reasons. So it basically was the healthiest dessert.
It's like you paid your doctor to get the best advice. Just like when my cat paid the vet in order to be able to get wet food all the time. It's brilliant. Eat what you want. Tell your doctor how.
Charlotte, I live in Canada. I don't have to pay my doctor.
Stop it. A healthcare system where you don't even have to bribe your doctor for the health advice you want?
Yep, it's true.
As an American, I can't even fathom what a thing like that might be like.
As an American, I agree, but I'm getting used to it. Other follow-up, I haven't checked this out yet, but listener Ned over from By the Bywater mentioned on the Megaphonic Patreon Discord that there is another podcast that he recommended that did an episode on one of the adult films that Robot Holocaust director Tim Kincaid did that we talked about last time.
Yes.
There's a podcast called either Cruising the Movies or maybe Ask Anybody. Not entirely clear. As I said, I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I'm very excited. They did an episode on Kansas City Trucking Company, and Robot Holocaust does come up at the end of it, apparently. The podcast explores a lot of interesting-looking movies of that ilk, so I really do need to sit down and check it out.
Perhaps it will suggest your next viewing experience.
Perhaps it will, although who knows? Who knows what else the director of Munchie did? I don't know.
What 70s porn could Dom DeLuise be in? Do you want to know? You do not. Or maybe you do. It's cool if you do, right? But it's not for me for two reasons. Porn and Dom DeLuise.
Dom and DeLuise.
Okay, three reasons. I'll come in again.
Anyway, that's just a bit of follow-up. We should get on to talking about Gunslinger.
Sounds good to me, Chris. Let's go.
This time we watch Season 5, Episode 11, Gunslinger. And hey, it's a Beverly Garland movie. It's 1878, and we're in the small town of Oracle, Texas. And Beverly Garland is playing Rose, the wife of the town's marshal. And, breaking news. I'm being told the marshal has been shot. The marshal has been shot in broad daylight. Oh, it sure is dangerous living in the Old West. Well, a new marshal has come into town, but until he arrives, Rose is going to wear the badge and try to track down her husband's killers. And one of them is kind enough to show up at the marshal's funeral, and Rose shoots him on the spot in broad daylight. It sure is dangerous living in the Old West. But Rose isn't the only woman in town. No, there's also Erica, who runs the local saloon. Turns out Erica has also been buying up a lot of property in town because you see there's a chance that the railroad that's being built will run through Oracle. And if that's the case, Oracle will become a boom town and Erica will be rich. Okay, and then a stranger comes to town, dressed all in black. Gotta be a bad guy, right? Well, kinda. Kane Miro is a gunslinger for hire, and Erica has hired him to kill Rose. See, Rose has started to interfere with Erica's scheming. She keeps demanding that Erica close up the saloon at 3 a.m. or stop buying buildings from people and then having them killed so she can get her money back. little things like that. Anyway, Erica and Kane have a romantic history, which upsets Erica's bartender boy toy, Jake, who pines for Erica. But now Kane and Rose are falling for each other, even though Rose's husband just died like a week ago or something. And also, Kane has been paid to kill Rose, so tricky. And the town has a mayor who Kane has a history with. Basically, Kane blames him for causing the South to lose the Civil War, which Kane sees as a bad thing. So, let's see. Jake tries to shoot Kane, but Kane's a faster draw, and Jake dies. Kane kills the deputy, and then he tries to kill the mayor, but hits the mayor's wife instead, and then kills the mayor. And then Erica tries to shoot Rose, but Kane's a faster draw, and Erica dies. Rose chases after Kane, and they have like a romantic standoff that ends with Rose shooting and killing Kane in broad daylight. Sure is dangerous living in the Old West. Well, anyway, finally, the new marshal arrives to look after a town whose population has been at least halved in the past week, and Rose heads off to, look for swamp diamonds or something. The end.
Meanwhile, on the Satellite of Love, Joel and the bots do have fun. This time, they've converted the game Kaboom into a chance to make Tom's head explode. And who doesn't love making heads explode? I know Dr. F does, as his submission to the Invention Exchange is a study guide to learn to make other people's heads explode with the power of your mind. Oh, poor, vulnerable Frank. Your head is not going to make it very far into this episode. The satellite crew's invention is Wiffle Everything. Much as how in the future Mike and the bots will deep fry and blossom everything, Joel and the bots Wiffle everything. Wiffle hat, Wiffle drinking glass, Wiffle sports jacket, Wiffle replacement hip. Wiffling basically means just adding a bunch of holes, which makes the Wiffle glass bad for drinking, the Wiffle hat bad for sun protection, but it makes the Wiffle cheese delicious. As they say, Swiss cheese is nature's own Wiffle. As our heroine buries her husband in the movie, Joel and the bots explore death and funerals. All three are in orange, satin-lined, upright caskets and contemplating their own funerals. Joel thinks he'll have a dignified funeral, sure, while Tom wants elephants at his educational funeral, complete with embalming how-to pamphlets. Crow's designs are very elaborate. He wants to lie in state for a week at the Corn Palace while a choir of castrati sing Hooked on a Feeling. And I must admit, if this happened, I would make the pilgrimage to Mitchell, South Dakota to pay my respects. There's Old West mail delivery in today's movie, so Crow decides to cosplay as a Pony Express rider, sending messages back and forth between Joel and Tom. The messages take forever to deliver, of course, since Crow must ride throughout the entire satellite to pass them along. So even though Joel and Tom are standing side by side, the messages are not delivered fast enough for Tom to get his peanut butter and Dijonnaise sandwich before movie sign. The movie shows some unrealistic movement of characters, suggesting to Joel that perhaps the set is just a front and not full-size buildings? No, you don't say. Well, Tom doesn't say. He insists that the characters are able to enter a building and instantly appear down the street because of quantum entanglement. Obviously. Tom demonstrates, but Joel and Crow are still unconvinced. I don't see why complicated and oft misunderstood physics can't be the answer, especially when so effectively demonstrated. I believe you, Tom. The episode closes with some letters. Deep-fried letters, but not blossomed, so they can still be read. This one comes from some folks in France who get episodes from friends who share the love of MST3K internationally. but not with their British friends. The British love of Benny Hill keeps them from understanding the subtle comedy of deep-fried letters. Am I right? What do you think, sirs?
Okay, listeners, I am very aware that Swamp Diamonds actually was released a few months before Gunslinger. But, the joke requires her to go, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Also, I was very happy to see a little CanCon representation in the episode with the Mads Invention Exchange, the scanner planner, exploding heads like David Cronenberg style from his movie Scanners from 1981, which is a classic movie that is far too visceral for me to have ever seen.
Yeah, I must admit I haven't seen it either. Although the thought of people blowing each other's heads up with the power of their minds is actually quite terrifying. It's a good premise for horror.
Sure. Former host of this show, Adam, would have had us do an entire segment to Scanners, but he went and did an entire series of episodes of his Canadian horror CanCon podcast, a part of our Scaritage, to the Scanners franchise. So we will link in the show notes to those episodes. But our apologies for anybody who is tuning into this episode explicitly for Scanners discussion.
Honestly, I think Adam would have done a better job talking about this than you or I could have patched together.
Sure, of course. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
It's so true.
We're here to learn.
That's true. But there's so much to learn about inside of this episode.
Yeah, this is the first Western they ever did. And while we've already done episodes on some of the Westerns that they would do later, including The Painted Hills and The Beast of Hollow Mountain, that's what it's called, not The Beast of Yucca Flats.
I always want to call it that, though. So many beasts, so little time.
But yeah, we're back in Western territory, a genre of movies that I deeply care about.
Oh, well, tell me all about your love of the Western.
Apparently, they have horses and guns that go bang.
Which, of course, if there's horses in a movie, means that Joel is going to do his horse voice like, oh, Merle, where are we going now? I love when he does that. It's one of my favorite bits.
Now, okay, so I don't really care about Westerns, and I've only seen a small handful of them. But you are a big fan of Bonanza.
I am a very big fan of Bonanza. Ding, 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 ding.
So, because you're a big fan of Bonanza, I trust that this means you love Westerns and have watched a million of them.
I don't think I could say that I've watched a million of them. I've watched quite a bit. And I think the reason why I've watched so many Westerns is, of course, because I have a family that likes Westerns. And so many of the places that we went to as tourists inside of the California area were about the Old West, right? Like we would go to Colombia, where you could pan for gold and you could learn about, the early settlers of California, where that was what they were trying to do, was make it rich with gold. And, even Sonoma, like when you go to their September festival, it's all about the founding of Old Sonoma, right? And it's all about people settling inside of the area. And of course, anytime you go to Lake Tahoe, you got to think about Donner Pass. Like, there's a chronicle of history of the Old West that everybody knows a little bit about.
So how does Gunslinger hold up to every other Western that you've seen? List them now.
Gunslinger has Beverly Garland, so obviously it's great. Come on, Chris. I can't believe you're even asking me this. She's phenomenal in this.
She's phenomenal in everything, as far as I can tell. I got to watch a couple interviews with Beverly Garland as I was looking for things for this show.
Oh, that must have been wonderful.
She's a treat.
Nice.
She's very smart and quick with an anecdote, and more on that in a bit, I believe.
Awesome. So I can't compare Beverly Garland's Gunslinger to every single, Western I've ever seen. It's a movie, so it doesn't have that kind of pithy action that the Paladin Have Gun Will Travel has. It's not about having some sort of like moral family upbringing type thing like the Cartwrights and Bonanza might, like they're all about doing the right thing. And Beverly Garland, she's really all about a little bit of revenge with a side of romantic tussle. So I don't mind. That's a very Beverly Garland way to go.
Yeah, and it's, of course, also a very Beverly Garland way to go to just be the most exciting thing in the movie. Certainly, John Ireland as Cain Miro doesn't really have a chance to impress. Although Allison Hayes, does a pretty good job keeping up with Beverly.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, she gets to play the naughty madam, but not in a, naughty madam sort of way. She's, trying to dominate the town. She has to give a little what for, and she does a really good job of it. I'm down with her performance as well. I mean, she's second.
So, because this is a film directed by Roger Corman, we've got a lot of familiar faces from other misted films directed by or connected to Roger Corman.
Familiar faces, familiar faces, familiar faces, familiar faces, familiar faces.
Obviously, Beverly Garland was in Swamp Diamonds and It Conquered the World. John Ireland, Cain Miro, was in H.G. Wells' The Shape of Things to Come. Do you remember him in that?
Nope.
Yeah, he plays the senator at the beginning. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
And Allison Hayes was in The Crawling Hand and The Unearthly and The Undead. And Jonathan Hayes, spelled differently, who plays Jake Hayes, spelled the same as Allison Hayes. He plays the wormy bartender.
Oh, the boy toy, as you called him.
The boy toy. And he was also in It Conquered the World, in Teenage Caveman, in the Saga of the Viking Women, in Swamp Diamonds. He was, of course, most famous for being Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, Roger Corman. Look at you using all your friends all the time.
Exactly. And Bruno Vasoda even shows up, who's in Daddy-O, Attack of the Giant Leeches, Wild World of Batwoman, The Undead, all that stuff. He plays the guy who gets shot as he's selling his thing and running out of town so that Erica can get her money back. Lots of familiar faces here because it's a Corman vehicle.
God, what would Hollywood have been without Roger Corman?
So it's probably worth spending a hot second to describe the making of Gunslinger.
Ooh, okay.
Because, it's Roger Corman, and there's always a story. Roger Corman's a storyteller. He wrote a little memoir called How I Made 100 Movies in Hollywood and Never Lost a Dime. We've talked about it before. I was happy to return to it to look for its Gunslinger gold.
Ooh, and what Gunslinger gold were you able to mine from this book?
So, we talked a little bit in our last episode about unions, about Hollywood unions.
Oh, yes.
The union and the studios had just negotiated and agreed to move from a 6-day work week to a 5-day work week.
Whoa.
But Roger Corman realized that there was just enough time before those new rules go into effect to make one more film in 6 days.
Stop it! Those rules go into effect by midnight. Quick, everybody, let's make a movie!
That's absolutely the vibe that you get from reading him talk about it. Unfortunately, it rained 5 out of those 6 days.
Oh my gosh! So he really did make a movie in 24 hours.
Kind of. No, it took him 7 days. He talks about it as though this is the only time he went over time.
Oh my gosh. Come on, Roger.
But I don't know if you noticed how muddy this film is. How just every scene in the background, not every scene, but most of the scenes in the background around the town, etc., it's just covered in mud.
I did not notice. I mean, everything looks shockingly dirty, but the Old West was dirty. I mean,
it's true.
That's just the way it was.
To be honest, I didn't notice it until I read that and remembered that fact and then went back and watched the episode again.
Huh.
And in fact, yeah, you can totally tell. It's pretty muddy out there. These horses are clomping through mud. It was a terrible shoot because of this. He talks about how trucks and cameras and lights were sinking into the mud that went up to their knees. They rewrote a bunch of exterior scenes to make them interior scenes. They put a tarp over the actors sometimes to keep them out of the rain.
Oh my gosh.
I think some of the early romantic shots between Beverly Garland and John Ireland are like that because they're weirdly tight.
Oh yeah.
But he also had to dub in a bunch of music and sound effects to cover up the pounding rain through a lot of those shots.
I mean, I'm sure in post-production, Roger Corman was just I can't believe how much money this is costing me.
He would joke about how the film should have been called Mudslinger.
Oh my gosh. That's a totally different movie. I can't believe that he then didn't pivot to, and now I'm making Mudslinger.
So it was kind of a disgusting, miserable film shoot. And the cast were having no fun. I don't even know if Corman was having much fun. Allison Hayes.
The owner of the saloon.
Yep, exactly. At one point asked, who do I have to get off this picture?
Whoa! Did she get an answer? I mean, this could have been a very different movie.
She kind of did, because in one scene, her horse slipped in the mud,
Oh.
she fell, and she broke her arm.
Oh my, that's not how you want to get out of a movie, though.
While they were waiting for the car to take her to the hospital.
Corman made her do a scene.
Yep, Corman, well, not a scene, but Corman shot a bunch of close-ups of her face to cut away to. So she, made her look left, made her look to the right, all that kind of stuff that you can edit in later.
I'm sure we'll need this. Rewrite the script. I need a left-looking Erica.
Exactly. And, he says she was down with it, like she understood what was necessary in this moment. I don't know. We don't get to hear from her about it. And then had to shoot a bunch of scenes with a body double.
Did they just throw in more dancing girls? Let's just have some more dancing. I need 5 more minutes. We got those 3 girls. Let's do it. Was Erica originally going to string up Beverly Garland? And they were like, oh, you can't have that happen now because you broke her arm. Let's send the 3 dancing ladies instead.
He did joke about how afterwards it really was a cast party as they all signed her cast. At the rap party.
Yes. Yep. So good, so good.
And Beverly always kind of wondered whether Allison slipped on purpose to get out of the shoot.
Oh.
I mean, I don't think she really wondered it, but it's the kind of funny thing that you think.
Was it a purposeful arm breaking? Maybe.
Did she fall or was she pushed? Something like that. And Beverly has a comment that's in the book. Corman's memoirs littered with comments from his actors and people he worked with and so forth. And Beverly's is choice, and I'm going to read it to you now. It's a bit long, but it's pretty good. She says, on Gunslinger, I was supposed to run down the saloon stairs, jump on my horse, and ride out of town. Now, we never had stunt people in low-budget films. Riding, stunts, fights, we did it all ourselves, and we expected it. And we all just said it was marvelously grand. I told myself just to think tall. So my first take, I thought tall. And I sailed right over the saddle and landed on the other side of the horse.
Oh no!
The second take, I twisted my ankle running down the stairs.
Oh my gosh.
A bad twist.
Oh.
I finished my scenes for the day and went home and soaked my ankle in hot water, which is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
The next day, I had my big saloon brawl scene with Allison Hayes, and my ankle was swollen as big as my head. So I told Roger, I can't even get my boots and pants on. No way I can do the barroom brawl. He said, oh, sure there is. And I laughed and I said, I'm sure you'll find a way. He did. A doctor with this huge needle loaded with 4 shots of Novocaine. Gee, my leg started to feel great. They then ripped the pants up the calf and taped the back. Ripped open the back of the boot, taped the back of the boot, and I worked all day and did all the fights, and it was great. It didn't feel so great that night, but I was better in the morning, and we finished the picture right on time. With Roger, you never felt you couldn't do good work. You sensed there was a high-energy, restless mad genius at work out there when he was making his movie.
She could have injured herself so much worse than she already was.
Yep. Turns out she was fine, though. So it's all good.
Sure, there was a happy ending, but come on, that's rough.
It's like an America's Funniest Home Video where, they're going to be okay at the end, so it's funny instead of a terrifying thing.
I don't like it, Chris.
Well, you don't have to take the role.
No, it's true. I mean, I am no Beverly Garland. I could never have done that. But I also hope that I wouldn't sail over the top of a horse, because that seems like it's a plot point in so many movies, and now it's like it happened behind the scenes. Roger Corman somehow did not capitalize on that, which shocks me.
So the screenwriters for Gunslinger, Mark Hanna and Chuck Griffin, had written a few scripts for Corman, which didn't get made. But Corman sent the writers off to see another movie, which I haven't seen, called 3 Hours to Kill, starring Donna Reed.
I love Donna Reed.
Well, you should consider seeing this movie and see how it compares, although the plot doesn't sound at all similar. As far as I can tell, there's a guy named Jim who's falsely accused of murdering another guy named Carter. Carter's sister, Donna Reed, was supposed to marry Jim and prevents him from being lynched by the town.
Okay.
That's all in the past. Now it's like 3 years later, and Jim finds out his old friend is the new sheriff, and he comes back to town, and the sheriff tells him he's got 3 hours to find the real killer. Hence, 3 hours to kill.
Yes. Yeah. And does he, in fact, find the... I guess we'll have to watch the movie to find out.
I guess you'll have to watch the movie to find out, but also I bet you can guess.
Well, I mean, it's a Donna Reed movie. I hope there's a happy ending, which means that they do find the killer and they get to go off into the sunset and get married.
Exactly. So Corman was like, I want that movie, but we're going to make the new sheriff into the widow. So we have a female sheriff because that'll be more interesting. And because Corman, thought of himself as kind of progressive about things and thought, have a female sheriff. That'll shake things up. That'll be interesting.
It really actually is.
It is kind of interesting. Yeah, I guess we didn't see that every day in these films. It seems like a lot of the press at the time thought that was a really interesting gimmick, ? An interesting approach to a Western. It was funny because, all right, I haven't seen 3 Hours to Kill, but I did rewatch the movie that Gunslinger reminded me of.
Oh, what was that?
It's a movie called Johnny Guitar.
Okay, that doesn't sound like a movie where there's a lady sheriff at all. That sounds something more like a musical.
Well,
is it a musical?
It's not a musical. Unfortunately, it's a very strange movie. It's from 1954, so 2 years before Gunslinger came out. And it stars, of all people, Joan Crawford.
Mommy Dearest Joan Crawford?
Mommy Dearest Mildred Pierce herself, Joan Crawford.
Oh.
Looking wildly out of place in the Wild West.
I mean, I imagine most actors inside of like the 50s and 60s did a Western at some point in time, but I have a really hard time imagining Joan Crawford in a Western.
Yeah, and even when you watch it, it's kind of like, all right, this is weird. She does not belong here, but she's very compelling. It's Joan Crawford.
Yes, yes.
And it's a movie where this time Joan plays Vienna. She's running the saloon, and she's planning to get rich from the railroad coming to town. There's another woman her name's Emma Small. She's a banker or something, and she also is buying up things and wants to get rich. And she's kind of one of the big people in town, so she basically controls the marshal. And she hates Vienna and tries 7 ways to Sunday to have Vienna killed by the marshal or by an angry mob. There's a lot of complicated love interests. Like Emma loves this guy named the Dancing Kid, and the Dancing Kid loves Vienna, and it gets very, very complicated. You basically need to do some serious love trigonometry to figure out everything that's going on in this movie. But like,
it's love calculus at this point, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. But
so you're telling me there's a guy named Johnny Guitar, there's a person named the Dancing Kid, and this is not a musical.
It's not a musical. It's this weird psychological drama. Like the first proper scene of the movie it just goes on forever. And it's like all of these characters, like they're in a Greek play, sort of addressing each other and bringing up the trauma they have with each other.
Oh my gosh. It's like a group therapy session in the middle of a bar?
Except nobody feels better at the end of it, yes.
I mean, that tracks sometimes. So.
Super strange movie. A lot of the reviews at the time were like, I guess this is a Western, but it's got Joan Crawford, and there's like very little horse action going on in this movie. It's just people talking to each other. Who wants to see that? Well, give it a couple decades and everybody retroactively is like, this is actually a brilliant movie.
My Dinner with Andre. Absolutely. There's very little horse action in My Dinner with Andre, too.
And yet the movie might have been even better with a bit of horse action. Anyway, it's another film about like two strong women in the Old West fighting on either side for control of what's going on. Except this movie has us rooting for the Erica type character rather than the person who's not the law, but is in charge of the law.
But neither one of them seem like very good people, right? And Beverly Garland's character is supposed to be like a good person, you know, like you're rooting for her because she's trying to bring order, right? And she's trying to like, I don't know, create like a happier town in some sort of way. Happier is not the right word, right? But she's trying to institute some goodness and community. And it doesn't sound like either of these people inside of Johnny Guitar are doing that. Like both of those ladies are all in it for themselves and money, it sounds like. And some twisted version of love?
Well, yeah, sort of. Except, all right, so Joan Crawford's character is hard to like. She's very she's Joan Crawford. She's very imperious. She's constantly giving speeches, and she's very charismatic in that way of like telling you, you know, you're doing the wrong thing, and you know you're doing the wrong thing, and why are you doing it? To an angry, you know, posse with like not pitchforks, you know, shotguns, but you know,
they might as well. Same thing.
Yeah, yeah. So she's very compelling in that way, in a way that's somewhat distrustful, but actually like she's doing nothing wrong.
Okay.
She does basically nothing wrong throughout the movie, and the entire town is out to get her. There's a very clear good and bad in that movie, and Joan Crawford's on the good.
She's on the good but perceived as bad side.
But perceived as bad.
Okay. Because she owns a saloon.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But, you know, in Gunslinger, Beverly Garland is Beverly Garland, and she's charming, and you
Yes.
quite like her.
Yes, you do.
But she's really bad.
Okay, it's true.
She's a really bad cop. I mean,
She's-
ACAB and all that, but like,
Yeah.
she's just shooting everyone. There are so many crimes,
know.
and she shoots and kills without anything like a
I
trial,
know.
without anything
I
like
know.
represent. It's so.
And it's so hard to understand what her motivation is, right? Like, my understanding at the beginning of the movie was that she just buried her husband, and her husband was killed by, I don't know, these gang members that she knows were hired by somebody to kill him. And so she's like, I'm going to take on the role of sheriff until the new sheriff comes into town because I deserve revenge on these people who have hurt my husband. And then what does she do? She closes down the saloon at 3 a.m. and starts telling the saloon their business. It's like, what are you doing? Like, what is your focus right now? Like, your focus should be on the revenge. And I don't know, maybe she suspects Erica from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, before the old marshal, her husband, is shot, they are talking about what are they going to do about Erica breaking the law. And he's like, I couldn't handle Erica. And, you know, Beverly Garland's like, I bet I could.
Sure.
So she's itching to like bring Erica into line with her perceived morality about having dancing girls who are showing elaborately layered bloomers because that's going to get guys off. And maybe it would. That's a whole different thing.
Sure.
But like, she's also, you know, constantly stalking everybody, assuming that she has the right to completely surveil them, right? Guy comes into town. She wants to, what are you doing here? I'm going to follow you and figure out exactly what you're doing, which like, it turns out that, yeah, he's up to no good. So sure. But like, I don't care for the panopticon state.
But still, like, she's so all over the place and not, like, how did she become sheriff? She basically, like, strong-armed the mayor into allowing her to be sheriff for a short period of time. And it definitely seems like she is overstepping her authority at every stage, right?
Yeah,
She
yeah.
even wears pants, Chris. Pants!
I'm okay with her wearing pants. That's fine.
I totally
That's not
am
a
as well,
problem.
actually. It's totally awesome. But she's wearing pants in the Old West. Like, only men get to do that. Like, she is overstepping her gender role in every part of this movie. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that part's good. That I'm down with.
Yeah, like, but it's also giving her, like, she's taking authority that everyone questions her having, but all she does is kill people. I don't know. What would you do if you had such authority in an Old West town?
Leave.
Well, Chris, certainly watching this movie and seeing Beverly Garland just taking on what's a traditionally masculine role inside of the town, and there really only being 2 women with 3 dancing girls, so 5 women, it just made me wonder what kind of lives women in the Old West even got to live. Like, what were their expectations?
Don't forget the wife of the mayor who's got a roast in the oven.
Yes, that is the weirdest euphemism I think I've ever heard.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
I mean, yes. And of course, she's the only woman in the the entire town who is serving that traditional female role for the Old West.
I suppose so. I mean, I guess when I think of this imagined Wild West that, we see in movies or whatever, that like the dancing girls are also part of that.
That's true. I suppose the dancing, although like the dancing girl, the choice of being a dancing girl in a saloon where there's maybe the suggestion that you're more than just a dancing girl. It's a typical role for women, but it's not the role that society wanted women to have, right? Like that was a woman who had chosen to leave the confines of what was expected for her gender.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't an esteemed role, right? Even though
yes, that's a better way to put it.
Feels like the society actually did want some women to take those roles. But like, we need you to do this, but also we're going to scorn you for doing it.
Yes, exactly. Like, please take on this role, but we hate you. Thank you. Bye. I mean, yes. So a typical role for a woman is going to be very much a homemaker role. It's going to be, living inside of that domestic sphere. Like there's lots of things written out there about like Victorian times and even into the 50s and before the Old West. But the Old West had the same structure of men having lives that could exist in the public they were breadwinners. They got to have all of these ambitions, and women were living in the home, living private lives where their role was to support their husband. And that dichotomy was the expected dichotomy of gender in the Old West, if you were a respectable woman.
Right. Although I'm sure plenty of them like had plenty of things that they needed to do on the ranch or whatever.
But that's part of your domestic role, right? Is some of the farm chores. So yeah, I mean, there were women who left the home, so they weren't just baking, although, oh my gosh, Chris, you've done some baking of bread. Some of that stuff is an all-day thing, right?
Especially if you don't have the KitchenAid, yes.
Yes, especially if you don't have the tools, right? If you're the person who's doing laundry for the entire household, that's now an all-day task when you don't have any automation, right? Like it is something you are doing by hand. So you really do have to have someone whose sole job and purpose is some of these life-sustaining chores, right? You're not going to be able to send somebody out into town to be able to earn money without having those kind of life-sustaining chores being taken care of at the home. So you needed somebody doing it. That was the respectable role. But obviously, we're not going to learn anything about the women who actually played their role perfectly, right? Nobody's writing a book about them by name.
I suppose so. I mean, I'm sure someone has.
Yeah, but I don't think that they would be naming these ladies, right? Like the names that you know about the Old West, like, I don't know, Annie Oakley and Belle Starr and Mammy Pleasant. Like these are names that people know because they're women who did something different than what was expected.
Did Mammy Pleasance, is that Donald's grandmother?
Alas, no, it's not Pleasance. It's Pleasant.
Oh, never mind then.
Yeah. No, but she's amazing. Like, Mammy Pleasant, absolutely a person that is worth looking up. She is a African-American woman who was part of the Underground Railroad, helping to liberate slaves. And then she moved across the West and became one of the pillars of society in San Francisco. Like she knew everyone's business in the elite houses of San Francisco and moved financial things around to her own benefit and to other people's benefit. Because as people who were Black were moving into San Francisco, they would come see her because she was a renowned civil rights activist right in the 1800s. They would come to her and be like, can you help me? And she would find them positions in other people's houses under the understanding that they would then bring her information.
Wow.
Yes, she's amazing. Like, even just reading a really small bit about her made me want to know more. And it made me wonder, like, why hasn't anybody made a movie about this woman yet? She sounds amazing because she went from, living in the South as a Black woman to being one of the pillars of San Francisco society. Like, oh, she's amazing.
I just looked her up, and it turns out that although they haven't made a movie about her, she was discussed in an episode of Drunk History, where she was portrayed by Lisa Bonet. So there's that.
Oh, I got to mull that one over for a little bit.
So, like, I'm not an expert in the American West at all. But I also know that some of these kind of frontier situations and some of these kind of low population situations often allow more flexibility for women than you'd expect. And women start taking on more jobs and more roles simply because
They have to.
there aren't enough men, or there aren't. Yeah, they're just, all that work needs to be done and somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, as you were saying, like, women have to do more than just what's happening in the house if they're living on a ranch or on a farm and there aren't enough people to actually do the farm work. So you're totally going to have women who are doing things like roping and branding, right? Who are essentially doing cowboy activities, but they're happening like at the property that they own.
Yeah, I didn't try to look up to see whether there actually were female marshals at any point or if there are any notable ones, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was, at least at some point, for even if just for a week, like in the movie.
Yeah, and I didn't find any of that in the book that I read, because the book that I read about this, it's called Soiled Doves. So it was really focusing a little bit more on prostitutes and prostitution. So they didn't really talk about people who were bucking the trends and becoming sheriffs or taking on what would have been widely understood as a male's role. But it was women who were finding power and wealth sometimes within, as you say, a role that was expected of them, but not in any way respected.
Well, I mean, that's how Joan Crawford, or the character she's playing anyways, managed to get enough money to build the saloon, was through 5 hard years of labor that she does not really want to talk about.
Yes, so you can imagine what that labor was, of course.
The implication is very heavy, yes. Which also, not a role you expect Joan Crawford to be in, but that's neither here nor there.
I suppose not. I mean, I expect her to absolutely be making short-term sacrifices for long-term goals. You know what I mean? And I don't expect her to have any problem with being like, selling my body so that I can get what I want. Short-term, fine. I'm going to forget about it as soon as it's done when I get what I want.
Yeah, no, if you haven't seen Mildred Pierce, go see it. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, definitely worth it. But certainly, like, the women who were being talked about inside of this book, Soiled Doves, were madams for the most part, right? They're people who are in charge of places where there's working women who are coming through here. It's really interesting. The woman who wrote this book, her name is Anne Seagreaves. Or Seagraves, perhaps. She's written a whole series of books about women of the Old West.
Sure.
She lives in Idaho, which is about the only thing that I know about her from her little blurb on the back of the book. And it's super interesting because when she is talking about these women, so she's talking about prostitution in general. She's talking about the structures about prostitution because, of course, there's layers of more acceptable roles in it, right? Like being a courtesan versus working in a high-class brothel versus working in a volume brothel where it's all about...
Ooh, that's a terrible term.
But that's the term that they're using for it.
No, I understand. I get it.
Yes. And then also something called crib prostitution, where you're essentially just setting up a tent.
Oh.
Right? So you're not in a house, you're not in a structure, you're setting up a temporary tent. So you're not inside of these parlors, you're kind of separate and alone inside of it. So you don't have the group of ladies, you don't have a madam that's kind of managing some of the law, some of the negative consequences that might happen. You just have like a single tent and you can take it down and move on really quickly if you need to. And then there's also streetwalkers, right? So this is like the next layer down where you don't even have a place to be. So it's horrific. Like, actually reading about this, but especially because when the author's talking about this, she has so much sympathy for the women who are inside of these roles, but she has so much distaste for prostitution. So she has a really hard time talking about it and separating out her talking about prostitution and sex for money, but then talking about the women themselves with so much respect and awe. It's a really weird juxtaposition.
Yeah, well, I guess that's like when we talk about a bad movie, but we really respect the actors in it.
Totally. It is very much like that as we're going through all of it, because it's difficult to separate out a person from the work that they do. And that's what she has to do when she's talking about these ladies, because many of them are in the positions that they're in through circumstance, right? They're people who got married but lost their husband, and now they are alone in the West with no protection, right? Or they're women who were brought in, right? She has a chapter about girls who were brought over from China in order to be prostitutes inside of the Old West. And again, those are ladies who had absolutely no choice or understanding into the lifestyle that they're going through. But she also talks about women like Julia Boulette, who lived in Virginia City, who was known as a prostitute with a heart of gold, whose funeral, was one that the entire town came out for, and they gave her like a lavish send-off. And I mean, just things like that. Like she'll talk about some of these women that totally bucked the trends and who were pillars of their home, like Mammy Pleasant, right? Who just dominated society after having this background, which I think is what your Joan Crawford character is trying to go to, right?
Yeah.
She's somebody who's trying to build a life and dominate the society in town and come ahead financially with the security that she needs after having this background, doing what she had to do, what circumstances had left her to. But of course, those are going to be the exceptions to the rule instead of
the average dancing girl that we see in the movie who, doesn't have an especially happy ending.
It's true. Although, I mean, so in the Old West, they did have ladies who were known as hurdy-gurdy girls. Okay, so the hurdy-gurdy is like the player piano, right? Where it would play its own music. You would put in a roll and it would play the music. So you didn't have to have a piano player.
Oh, okay. That's not what a hurdy-gurdy is, something else. But I guess they might have called automatic player pianos that as a nickname. Sure. The hurdy-gurdy is like a medieval instrument.
Oh, well, so maybe it looks like that medieval instrument. I don't know. But they called these hurdy-gurdy girls because you could pay them to dance with them while this pre-made music was playing, right? And you could own a hurdy-gurdy without having to have somebody who actually knew how to play the piano. Like high-class brothels or the elegant parlors with the courtesans, like they would have somebody they would refer to as the gentleman who would play piano, right? And create atmosphere. But you would also have dance halls where there would just be ladies who you could pay to dance with you. And they weren't necessarily prostitutes, right? It was a way to have female company, but not have company, I mean, some of them were prostitutes too. It wasn't exclusive this or that. But there were other roles that women could play besides being paid for sex.
Yeah.
Which,
that's certainly true.
Dance work is work. Sex work is work. Like all of this is work.
Well, this is one of the things I think about whenever people talk about how people are forced into sex work, is that most people who work are kind of forced into working.
That is true.
A lot of people, I mean, they want to do something meaningful and fulfilling, but a lot of people work in jobs where it isn't fulfilling or meaningful, or they work more than they want to because they have to if they want to live in the world.
Yes. You know what? This is one of those times where she like lets her feeling about sex work come forward, because she talks about these women who, like, if you were a prostitute and you were working at one of these brothels, you would have a certain number of days on, or you would work for a certain period of time. But then you had to move on and go to another town and work at a different brothel. Otherwise, you became known as one of the old ladies in the brothel, right? And you didn't get a lot of business. So you had to go to another brothel, and you had some time off in between. And she said that some of these ladies, even if they're in their time off in between, they would go up to mining camps and set up a tent and be a crib prostitute for a little while because they were, quote, nymphomaniacs. And it's like, okay, this is you telling a little bit on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because this is the work that you do doesn't mean that you're doing it as like an obsessive behavior.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a little bit of judgment going on there. But I mean, perhaps there were women who, well, I don't know, that seems like a diagnosis that would not have existed at the time. So it seems like,
we don't have to.
It seems like a cruel thing to talk about.
I don't feel like we need to like both sides that one.
No. Yes.
That's just a silly thing for her to have said.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. 13 fun facts littering the streets of today's experiment, Gunslinger. Go, Charlotte, go!
If there's one thing Joel and the bots know about the Old West, it's how you delivered the mail. The Pony Express. Yeah! After all, the whole town is waiting for a letter. And you know how letters were delivered to the Old West? The Pony Express. Yeah! Why, they even dedicate an entire sketch to the Pony Express. Yeah!
And, like, it's a pretty good sketch. But the movie doesn't actually mention the Pony Express. It does depict something like the Pony Express, with carriers getting fresh horses every so often so that they can deliver the mail as fast as possible, but they call it the Postal Express. Because, as a lot of you listening already know, the Pony Express has nothing to do with the time and place depicted in the movie. Yeah.
First off, the movie takes place in 1878, so the Pony Express service had been canceled, 17 years before the beginning of this movie? That's right, the Pony Express only lasted for about 18 months, and it ended a few months after the Civil War began. If it takes place after the Civil War, there's no Pony Express. Yeah.
Also, the Pony Express was a way to get letters from the East Coast to California, and specifically it was a route between St. Joseph, Missouri and San Francisco. And so the Pony Express didn't go anywhere near Texas, where our movie is set. But, you know, there were other ways to deliver mail, right?
Sure, usually by stagecoach. Passengers and mail could be carried by services like John Butterfield's Overland Mail Company, which had a route that went from Missouri to California through Texas. No valuables, though. That would make the stagecoaches a target. Anyway, thing is, that also ended in 1861.
Yeah, many of these services stopped around 1861 because of a new invention, the telegraph. The telegraph was by far the fastest way to deliver messages long distance. And, also there was that Civil War that kind of put a wrench in things.
But the mail was still delivered, just not as fast as the Pony Express did it. There were plenty of other stagecoach lines that went through Texas. They just weren't as famous or far-reaching as the Pony Express or the Overland Mail.
And most towns would have had a postmaster, even a town as small as Oracle, as far as I can tell. The Texas Almanac for 1870 has a list of dozens and dozens of towns with postmasters all across Texas. And if you check it out, you'll see that it was not unusual for those postmasters to be women.
But that isn't to say you couldn't hire someone to deliver a message by horse. Actually, I wonder if you could still hire someone to deliver a letter by horse. Can you? Is this something I could hire someone to do on, like, Fiverr?
I mean, maybe. Some places are remote enough that they still do the last leg of travel by animal. There's a town in Arizona called Supai, which is inside the Grand Canyon, where they bring mail in and out on mules.
But also, Texas in the 1870s had a robust telegraph telegraph network with, it appears, over 1,500 miles of wire going across the state, and plans in 1870 to start making connections in the frontier towns. Erica could probably have gotten the news by telegraph.
And, like, whatever. The movie has something like the Pony Express because that's part of how we imagine the Old West, and it makes for a dramatic moment and all that. It's fine. It's just, interesting to think about what the texture of life was really like back then.
Dang it, I'm only getting search results for transporting horses across the country, not for transporting things by horse across the country. What the heck? We used to be a real country.
And that's time.
Well, Chris, we've learned a lot about the Old West, but maybe there's a final factoid you can leave us with before we move on to another episode?
Yes, actually, there's two. At some point, real quick, at some point in the episode, at the bar, they make a LaCroix joke, which feels very out of place from the early 90s.
Yeah, it does.
But it turns out that LaCroix comes from Wisconsin. It was started in 1980, and it was pretty popular in the Midwest.
No way!
Well before it became a huge trend a few years ago.
I would never have guessed.
It's named after La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Oh, well, that makes sense. But you said that was only one of two final factoids you have for us. What's the other one?
Yeah, the bigger one is that I want to talk a bit about Sam Bass, the guy who shows up to be the new marshal at the end of the movie.
Oh, like he's a character that's on screen for like a minute. What are you going to tell me about Sam Bass?
Well, I'm going to tell you he's a real person.
What?
Like, they're making a reference to an actual famous person from the Old West here. Somebody whose tales are sung about in songs and who occasionally shows up in other media.
There's a song about Sam Bass?
Yes, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
So Sam Bass was, in fact, an outlaw, which they mention in the movie because there's a point in the movie where Beverly Garland is talking with Kane Miro about how, sometimes the bad guys are good guys for a while. He used to be a sheriff for a while, but now he's back to being a killer. And
yeah, he says that Sam Bass is like somebody who used to be on the wrong side of the law, but he decided to move over to the correct side of the law so that he could kill more people, right? Like that's why everybody becomes a lawman, because they like the killing more than the riches.
Right. But in fact, it's kind of the other way around because Sam Bass worked for a bit for the sheriff of Denton, Texas, where the best ever death metal band out of Denton came from.
Yes, I've heard of him.
Yeah. But then after, a few jobs and money-making schemes busted, he formed an outlaw gang.
Sure, as one does.
As one does. They robbed stagecoaches, and once they managed to rob a train carrying gold out from San Francisco.
Oh.
They managed to nab like $60,000, which is now like almost $2 million or something like that. A lot of money in gold they managed to steal.
Dude, you don't need to work for the rest of your life if you have that kind of money. But I guess you got to fear for your life if you stole it.
Well, exactly. The gang split up after the heist, and the rest of the bandits were soon caught and killed. Sam managed to get back to Texas.
Oh, all right.
Formed a new gang, robbed some more stagecoaches and trains. One of his gang members turned informant. The Texas Rangers were able to go after him. They managed to shoot him, and he died a few days later.
Ooh.
On his 27th birthday.
What? He doesn't look 27 in this movie.
Well, you might remember that the movie takes place over May and June 1878.
Uh-huh.
Sam Bass's 27th birthday when he died was July 21st, 1878.
Ooh.
So he's not going to be marshal for very long.
No. He's going to die in Oracle. That poor guy. That town has just been decimated by killing, and now they're going to lose another sheriff? Oracle sounds like a terrible place to live. It's like Cassandra's town.
Yeah. So he became sort of a legendary folk hero type, I guess. I'm not sure why, but he did because he had exploits. And there's like a folk song about him. We'll link to an Alan Lomax recording of the song. It's fine.
Is it about what a great guy Sam Bass is, or about him stealing stuff?
It's about like what a good story his life is more than anything else.
Oh, okay.
Also, in 1959, Sam Bass would be featured in an episode of the TV Western Colt 45, where he was portrayed by...
I can't even begin to guess.
That's right, Alan Hale Jr. The skipper from Gilligan's Island.
Well, that sounds like a good idea, little buddy. If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you too helped tame the Wild West. Or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our email is info@itsjustashow.com, and we're on Blue Sky, and we would love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you, and like our randomly selected supporter, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. For about $1 an episode, you can be like Jeff and help us research and record this show. You can join us in a friendly Discord, and you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/173. Well, Chris, the Wild West has been thoroughly tamed, I believe, by our friend Beverly Garland. What could we possibly be watching next?
Well, we're going to switch it up a little bit next time by watching Season 6, Episode 11, Last of the Wild Horses.
Oh, that sounds like another Western.
It is.
Oh, well, maybe the West is not quite so tame yet.
Yeah, and also, maybe that's okay. Maybe the West didn't need to be tamed like that.
Yeah.
But until then...
And naughty spank, and you've been bad in the tushy.
Most people are morally ambiguous, which explains our random dying patterns. Take it away, Theme Squad.
Yeah.